Hello and welcome back to all of my second and third grade artists. And for every artist that's joining me here today, it's me, Mrs. P, Mrs. Pendleton, your art teacher, hitting you back on YouTube just to say hello and to let you know I love you and I miss you. And to even those folks that are watching that aren't my students, please know that your teachers miss you and love you too. So I'm here to represent all the teachers to just send our love to our students and to our families that we're apart from at this time. But I'm glad that you joined me today because we're going to be making some art together. And I'm so glad we had the chance to still be creative together. So this lesson is for my second and third grade artists. This plan is along with all of your lessons that are currently on Teleschool. But if you're not one of my students, you're welcome to follow along as we learn some vocabulary, and we are going to be making a landscape today. I'm going to talk about the different ways that we can do that. Like I said, some of the vocabulary that we're going to be using and working with. We're also going to talk a little bit about seasons. Currently it's the spring season, but I want you to think about what type of environmental changes we see in different seasons and how you can represent that in your artwork using different lines and shapes and even patterns if you want to. I'm also going to go over the standard that we're working from today. So are you ready? Let's do it. Okay, to my second and third grade artists, before we begin our landscape drawings, we have to go over a few vocabulary words. So a landscape is a picture or drawing of anything of an area that is outside, okay? So instead of drawing something that's inside your house or in your room, you're gonna think about things that you see, maybe when you look out the window or when you go outside. Anything that is an outside area can be included in a landscape. We talked about foreground, middle ground, and background. With our self-portraits, foregrounds are objects that are drawn a little larger. They're in the front or the bottom of your page, okay? You draw them closer to the bottom. Things that are middle ground are things that we draw in the middle, and they sometimes get a little smaller. And things that are in the background are the things that are closer to the top, or they're supposed to be farther away, and sometimes we draw them smaller. Or anything in the background could be anything that's behind or in the empty space behind the objects that you have in the foreground or the objects that you drew in your picture, okay? We talked about season. We are going to be doing a seasonal landscape. Seasonal meaning thinking about how the seasons change, what happens during certain seasons. What do you see outside? What is different in the air? What is the weather like during the spring? What is the weather like and what is the sky like during the summer, okay? What does it feel like in the winter? What type of weather conditions do we see? What does it look like in the fall? How do the leaves change? How do the plants change? Think about all those things that you see that change as the seasons change, because you want to think about maybe your favorite season or seasons that you think have the most exciting things happen, and you want to try to draw those or represent those in your landscape drawing. We're thinking about details. That means even the small things that represent lots of things that are part of our world, even the small things like blades of grass, flowers, things that just honestly make our artwork even more interesting, okay? We talked about the weather, and we talked about seasons. We're thinking about maybe snow, rain, ice, wind, hot days, cool days. How do those weather conditions affect the environment, and how can you draw those in your landscapes? Also, for my third graders, that's an additional vocabulary word. So second graders, you're welcome to use that as well. But my third graders also, we talked about motion lines last week when we were drawing ourselves in motion, how we could draw lines behind our bodies or behind objects to make it look like they're moving. So we're going to incorporate some motion lines maybe into our weather conditions in this landscape drawing, okay? Our standard is VA2/3 CR1. Engage in the creative process to generate and visualize ideas by using subject matter and symbols to communicate meaning. So that's why we're thinking about how we're going to represent parts of seasons, okay? What symbols or what images or what drawings can we put in our artwork to symbolize parts of the seasons or to represent parts of the seasons and part of weather, okay? So being as though we are going to be doing a lot of drawing, that's why we're sticking with this standard right here, because it also includes creating sketches and drawings for self-reflection. And so you guys know, or if you don't know, most sketches are done with pencil. But because I want you to see things a little easier, I'm going to be using marker with our drawing today, okay? So let's get started. First, I'm going to take my marker and write my name at the bottom. Put a box around it so I do not add any color over it. Now, here's the great thing about being an artist. Your landscape could be anything from your imagination, or it could be anything that you see when you look outside. My landscape is going to be what I see when I'm looking out the window. And when I look out the window, I see lots of trees, and I see some houses, and I see some yards. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to start with a horizon line. That is a line that goes from one side all the way to the other. You may remember this from drawing our self-portraits, unless you did this self-portrait with a pattern behind you. So if you didn't, here's what it is. You can draw it bumpy, you can draw it straight, just as long as it goes from one side to the other. It kind of lets you know where the ground begins and the sky ends, or vice versa. Okay? So across my street, I actually live in a cul-de-sac, and so I look across the street and I see houses. So I'm going to start with some simple shapes for my houses for this drawing project. Some simple shapes like rectangles, triangles, trapezoids, things like that represent the houses that I see when I look out of this window. Of course, like I said, you can make this as detailed as possible. You can add windowsills, you can add fancy doorknobs, you can add brick patterns or siding patterns, whatever it is that you want to do. And across the street from that house, there are a lot of trees behind that house. So what I'm going to do is, we talked about overlapping, was when you draw one thing in front of or one thing behind something else. So I want to draw this tree behind this house. So I'm going to start my tree here. There are a lot of fluffy trees. I'm going to use some curved lines, some simple curved lines to represent my tree. But when I get to the house, I'm going to stop. I'm going to pick up my pen because my tree continues up here. I'm going to have those lines meet. I'm going to draw the trunk to my tree here. Okay. And there's a couple of other trees behind it. So I'm going to start at the house here. Put your pen or pencil here. Whatever it is you're drawing with, whatever you have, use it. Draw another fluffy tree back here. It's a little more pointy. I can't see the bottom, so I'm not going to draw it. And let's have another tree over here. It's kind of like this tree here. It's a little more pointy. It has a few more edges. So I'm going to use some zigzags there, some curves there. And when I get to the house, I'm going to stop because I can't see it anymore. So I'm going to draw the trunk of my trees here. Okay. And thinking about middle ground, I can actually see another house in the background too. So I'm going to draw another horizon line starting from the middle of this tree. I'm going to make it bumpy. And because this house is farther away, I'm going to draw it a little smaller. If you look at things just using your eyes, think about what you can see in the distance. The farther things are away, the smaller they appear to be. So, as an artist, I am going to use what I know and how I see things based on my observations. That means I'm using my eyes to make decisions. And I'm drawing based on what I see. I observed that that house looks smaller from farther away. It also has a little garage next to it as well. So I'm going to add that. And because this house also has some trees, I'm going to draw some trees. I'm going to make them smaller because they're what? Farther away. Same type of trees. Kind of fluffy, kind of pointy. Get to the house, stop. Get to the house and stop. Trunk. Some more trees behind it. I'm going to start at the house. This time, slowly work my way down. I can't see it past the garage, so I'm going to stop there. Let me draw the garage door here. And there's one more tree. I'm looking at it right now, artists. I'm looking at it. A little pointy at the top, and I can see the trunk from here. So I'm going to draw it. If you want to, now I can't see anything past these other trees, But I can just use my imagination and maybe draw another house back there. So you can draw, again, what you see in your landscape, or you can make some stuff up. Does it have to be houses? No. It could be a land filled with trees. It could be a forest. It could be mountainscapes. It can be a park. It can be whatever you want it to be, just as long as it's an outside area. I'm going to add some lines to represent grass here. Add some more lines to represent some grass, because it's their large yard here. And right in front of my house, there's some concrete for the street. So I drew that there. So now this is where I'm going to add some details and where I'm going to add the weather. What season does this look like? To me, it kind of feels like spring. And I think I'm going to use spring because this is the season that we're in. So guess what it did today during this wonderful spring day? It rained. So I'm going to add some rain clouds. And I am going to draw, I'm going to use broken lines to represent the rainfall. Now, some of you artists, if you want to actually draw raindrops, you can make them large, you can make them small. They could come directly from the cloud if you want to. And there was a lot of wind blowing, so that's why some of my drops are kind of going at a diagonal, because that's how it was going. But if you want to use lines to represent the rain, you can do that too. So, what do you think? So, here is my finished drawing of my landscape, okay? So remember, we're just starting off with our drawings this week. If you are prepared to go on and add color or to add tone with your crayon or to use whatever you have around you to start adding color to your landscape, feel free. But our next video will show you how I plan to use certain color schemes to add color to my landscape, okay? Now, next week is spring break. So I hope you guys have an amazing spring break, and I'll be back with new videos the week after that. But let's say I, do a surprise video sometime next week. So make sure you come back and check the channel. All right, guys? Again, thank you for joining me today. Thank you for your subscribes and your likes. Thank you for sharing your work with me and emailing me and getting in touch with me through our teams and our message board and a variety of other ways that we are keeping in touch, artists, okay? So please remember, same rules that we have in our art room. Be nice to each other, okay? Practice self-control and help the people around you, okay? You guys, please take care of each other. Stay healthy, stay inside, and know that I love you and I miss you, and I can't wait to see you and your art and to hear from you all. Until next time, be well.